autodidactic Kelly and Cambell here. I have asked Cambell to join me today on a spontaneous podcast because I have a theory that I want to run past Cambell's brilliant mind and then extend to our community. It's a working theory and process. So good morning, Cambell. How are you going, buddy?
Hey, Kelly. I'm awesome.
So, okay, so I just want to go straight into it because it's just fresh in my mind, and bear with me. And then you, buddy, jump in and fucking tear it apart or add your genius and tell me what you think. Okay, so can you bear with me for 5 minutes while I get this out in some sort of order?
I can dig it.
So let me just set the scene. I was just by myself the other night and I started to have this esoteric conversation with myself. And I was basically saying to myself over and over again, Kelly, what is your name? What is your real fucking name? What is your name? Remember your name, because something about all this work with Tartaria has brought up my consciousness around we were somehow them. Like the reason we are connected so strongly to this consciousness is because we are the incarnation of it coming forward, right? So I'm working through. So I'm like, okay, to begin the theory, the hypothesis, we can agree, Cambell, that the Tartarian culture was a culture of light. They were a civilization based on light. And that's in everything we study, everywhere we go, it always comes back to the use of electricity or the ether, whichever. Electricity may be the callous shadow version of the ether. And that their technology, their architecture, their beauty, their art, their masterful creativity, all sort of orientated around the use of the ether or electricity in our terms. Agreed?
Yeah.
So then I'm thinking, well, all right, the word Tartaria is in question. Fair, of course, we all think that. Would it be better, say, stated as the light civilization that built our cities? So could we say this was a light civilization? Would you agree to that?
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, what do we call ourselves today? What is the word that we are constantly referring to ourselves as? Light workers. Why do we connect this notion of light workers? As we move through this idea of ascension and spirituality, we can conceptualize ourselves as starseed or light workers. They're the two words that come to my mind all the time. And what do we do as light workers? Well, we engage in modalities and practices that basically essentially increase our quadrant of inner light, whether that's through eating high nutritional food, organic food that we've grown, being in nature, being around animals, drinking living water, healthy living water, being out in the sun, very healthy concept, especially during these COVID times. And of course, the notion of meditation and bringing up that inner spiritual light. And we refer to ourselves as light workers. So are we the incarnated souls of that light civilization that we study? So here's my theory. Because I keep asking myself, where did all the bodies go, Cambell? Where did we go?
Yeah.
That we have never found evidence of
skeletons.
No skeletons. There's literally, and one would say this civilization expands across the whole realm. Like it was some unified civilization that expanded in all areas. Our buildings prove that, the architecture proves that to us. So they were a gigantic, not just literally, but a gigantic civilization. So there should have been mass evidence of bodies. So I'm like, okay, where did all the bodies go? So Tartaria Australia, this is my theory. Imagine in the time of the light civilization that built our cities, there were two suns. Now imagine if there were two suns, that they only ever had light, that they were nourished by the light, because there's no kitchens or evidence of cooking in kitchens in these buildings. Is that accurate?
Toilets.
Yeah. And no toilets, right?
Yeah. No kitchens either.
Okay, so imagine if they were nourished by the light, They were replenished and regenerated by the light. They were gigantic because of the light. So Cambell, what happens when you put plants in the ground and they have full sunlight? They grow big, right? In full sunlight, plants grow big. So what happened to our civilization? Now imagine if they were in full sunlight all the time, and there were two suns which accommodated for the whole realm. So there was a sun on either side of the realm at all times. There was never darkness. And I kept thinking to myself, what could possibly have happened to destroy this civilization? Their technology was high frequency and abundant. Their creativity, their beauty, their thriving, their regeneration, high light frequency. What happens in light frequency? You're connected to joy, love, inspiration, aspiration, genius minds, right? So what could possibly have happened to actually have destroyed this civilization? What was so fucking terrifying that it literally petrified them? And when we talk about like these stone structures, what do we see? We see petrified animals, giant petrified animals. We see giant petrified giants just collapsed on the ground and turn into mountainscapes that we build our towns on. We see these giant remains of trees. They were silicon based, but they were literally petrified into stone. And I kept thinking, Cambell, another word for petrified, fucking terrified. So did we get this notion of petrified from the word terrified? So what could possibly have happened that was so petrifying, so terrifying to a race of light beings? The darkness. Imagine if one of the suns was removed, replaced, changed, hidden, whatever happened, but we lost one of the suns. And it was instantly, simultaneously replaced with the moon. Now, if you look at the moon, it's not a real body. It's see-through. We all know there's some fucking big issues with that moon. Now, imagine they had to replace the sun with another body, another thing to keep universal law of balance. Otherwise, the realm could have faced an apocalypse, which ultimately in Latin just means an uncovering and unveiling, but an apocalypse, a destruction. So to keep that balance, it had to be replaced with something. What is the moon? It's like a false reflection of the sun. It's like the mirror of the sun. Like from our studies with Tartaria, it's a snapshot, like a photograph of. It's like a reverse photograph of the whole realm. So we see these our continents in the whole realm, and it was like when it was sort of put there, it created an image, but that image was only created from the actual sun's reflection onto the realm and was then like projected back up to the moon to create this holographic moon image. So imagine then the sun is removed and the moon is created, which is a shadow of the sun, a mirror of the sun, the polarity of the sun, the dark side of the sun, the false sun almost. Now, what happens to a race who lives only in the sunlight? And suddenly they have this idea of nighttime. Imagine if you're a race, you know only the light, and suddenly out of nowhere, darkness ascends for the first time ever. You've never seen it. You've never comprehended it. It's not even imaginable. And suddenly your realm is in darkness. Would that not be the most terrifying, petrifying event to occur to a civilization of light? Yeah. Now imagine if their whole energetic form, their whole frequency body was nourished and fed off the light like we are with oxygen currently. And imagine if tomorrow we wake up and realize that 50% of our oxygen has been removed. That would be fucking terrifying. Like if our capacity to breathe oxygen had decreased by 50%, this would be akin to a culture of light being placed into darkness suddenly, where their whole energetic resonance and being their life force, which is the light, had been cut in half. And suddenly they were faced with with a darkness, let's say an enemy, suddenly an enemy that was dark, that they couldn't fight. You can't fight the darkness. No weapon can fight darkness. You can't light it up enough. It's a false light in the dark. And they can't take their nourishment from it. And suddenly with the introduction of darkness, they are introduced to time, because they have night and day suddenly, and a 12-hour repetitive cycle suddenly. But their vitality and their energetic is cut in half. What happens to plants, Cambell, when they grow in the shadows? When a row of plants are grown and two plants find the light all day, and there's a little plant underneath that plant and it's trapped in the shadows, what happens to it?
It's stunted.
It can't grow. It can't grow in the dark. And when you take a plant and you grow it in the dark, it stays so fucking small. Cambell, it stays so small. So how did we go from a giant civilization to a tiny civilization of our current day? We were put into the dark. Half of our
the dark side.
Into the dark side. And plants are such a good analogy for this, because we know if you try to grow plants in the shadows or in the dark, they don't grow, they stay really small. If you put a plant in full sunlight and a plant in the shadows, one grows gigantic. Hello, Tartaria culture. Hello, all of the gigantic buildings and all of the giants before now. And one stays perpetually small. It cannot do it. Without the sun, without that photosynthesis in full blast, it cannot grow bigger. It can't do it. It doesn't have the photosynthesizing biological chemical response in its DNA to grow bigger. So imagine by removing one whole sun, it literally shrunk the population down to our current size. And I swear to fucking God, our population is still shrinking. And it's still shrinking because they are putting so much shit into our atmosphere. They are doing everything in their power to block out the sun. In England, there's a thing called sad disease. Sad disease in England, because they get depressed and they get sick because they don't have access to seeing the sun. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's proven.
Right now,
yeah. You got more? You keep going.
yeah, I've got more. Give me 5 more. Okay.
More.
So they remove the sun. I don't know how. I don't know what that even means. I can't tell you what I don't know what the sun is, but they take away half of the light quadrant, half of the life force. The generation that's born into that is small. It's born into the shadows like a seedling. It's born under the cover of darkness. It gets minimal amount of light, so it grows small and stays small. In fact, continues to shrink so small. But when you take away the light quadrant or the life force of a civilization so dramatically, and you remove it from that, I guess, ultraviolet ray, and you descend it down into what is the light of the dark, down through the infrared. Now, what creatures can see in infrared? The creatures that live in the dark. The creatures that live in the dark always seem to have venom. And they terrify us because their venom can kill us. They are the snakes and the spiders and the scorpions. They hide in the dark. We can't see them. They're scary to us. We have a universal fear of these entities. You take them down. Now, when you shift a light civilization from full blast, 24-hour sun with no sense of time, because this is 24-hour sun, they don't need to eat. They don't need to shit. They don't need to sleep. And you introduce them to the darkness, to time, and to sleeping for the first time ever. And what happens when we sleep? We become non-creators. we become essentially nothingness. We turn ourselves off. We don't know what happens in our sleeping time. If you are a light worker like we are, you most likely have very active dreams, because you are not geared towards sleeping. That was never our process as the light civilization. We didn't sleep. We probably took rest and regeneration in the living waters. And when we think of that Tartarian culture, everything was geared to the harnessing and the using of that ether energetic. The fashion had all the means to have that electricity running through the shoes, running through the outfits, you know, all of the buildings, everything was aligned with the constant regenesis of that ether flowing through the being. They didn't sleep. Have we ever found a gigantic bed in our research? Were there bedrooms, Campbell? Did they have evidence of gigantic beds? I've never seen one. Have you?
I have not, no. No, I mean, all I can think of is what we're told, you know, 4-poster beds, but I mean, don't even really see that many old ones, do we?
No. Because if they were in the light and nourished
kitchens,
by
like
the
you
light,
mentioned too.
Without the darkness, why would we consider sleeping? And when we sleep, what happens? One half of the world at all times has turned itself off, has moved into a state of non-creation, has become a nothingness. And one half of the world at all times now is in the dark, which means the dark and the light is now completely integrated as two halves of our reality completely. When imagine if there was never darkness before now, before this reset. And then I started thinking, okay, so not only did they remove one of our suns, imagine if they then dismantled and removed, which they did, all the technology from that civilization that harnessed the ether, and then they replace it with technology that gave us electricity. A mirror, false version, light bulbs. All of the electricity we play witness to now is actually filtered through technology. Lighting, light bulbs, LEDs, now computer screens, LCDs, all of that light that we have access to, that cold, blue, bright light that is our version of electricity, is all we know of electricity, of light. And apart from the sun's light, all other versions of light now comes from this technology they've given us and fed it back to us, which means technically we don't even know the color of the ether, because our only notion of electricity now is through their technology. So they changed the light spectrum. When they changed the light spectrum, it changed our perception, what we could see, and also what light we could take in. So they've stolen the ether and repackaged it as electricity. This is my theory. Now,
Nice, okay.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, let's go back to where are all the bodies? Because I'm thinking, where are all the bodies? What do we know about? What do we know? What's the most obvious stuff about this whole investigation? There were these gigantic, beautiful architectural structures, and there was the mud flood. Is the mud flood the remains of us? Is the mud flood actually mud? What if, did you see the Marvel film Infinity Wars, where they actually so in Infinity Wars, they use these infinity stones, but in 1 second, he changed the I don't know what word I would say, let's just say the frequency or the vibration of the atmosphere that supported this civilization, and 50% of the living beings throughout the entire universe or all realms instantly turned to ash. What happens if, when you shift a whole civilization from light to dark, and you do it by removing a sun, the balance, and you replace it with a false moon, and you introduce darkness and time, and and you go from ultraviolet to infrared. Like, what happens to the bodies, the beings? Could they possibly just explode, disintegrate, pulverize? Like, have you seen the experiments when they take a piece of fruit, or even actually a living being, and they put high intense sound waves or high intense frequency bands, and they just like explode? They just like,
yeah.
So imagine if that shift did that to us. Or even so far to go as the darkness. When we entered the darkness for the first time, absolutely petrifying for the first time, it is, our whole vehicles just boof, and we turned from silicon structures. Hello, Crystal City journey we've been on. The silicon structures, what are they? They are structures of light, Cambell. Crystal structures of light. They absolutely make sense that they live in a light civilization of light workers. And you turn that to a carbon structure in 1 second. They become an organic carbon structure that can decay. Now imagine if the vehicles just, when they enter the dark, and all of that, I'm just going to say ash, it's not the right word, but just say all of that material just fell to the ground, billions of us. And we created a layer upon a layer upon a layer that buried our cities. And so as we dig our cities out of the mud, Cambell, imagine if we're just digging it and it's us, the remains of us. Now, interestingly, when you go to the Bible, what does it say? And we think the Bible was written maybe only 300 years ago, after this reset. What does it say? It says that Adam was made from the clay of the earth. So imagine if they reconstructed the human being using the DNA in that mud. Our DNA in the layers of that mud. Is that where that analogy came from? Also in the Christian Bible, we have the idea, the awakening, what's happening now. We are waiting for the return of the sun. In Christianity,
the sun, the sun, right.
In Christianity, they say S-O-N, the return of Christ, the return of the Christos. But here we could say, is it S-U-N, the return of the sun? And when we look at the ascension timeline, it's all about returning to the light. It's all about going back up that frequency spectrum, that light spectrum, back up to ultraviolet, back out of infrared, back out of Hertzian, into the light with the return of the sun. Now, what is an apocalypse? In Latin, it just means uncovering, to uncover. So imagine, and I don't know if they've ever tested this, Cambell, like we call it a mudflood, because that's what our eyes can see. And maybe that's what the top layer looks like now when organic matter over 300 years ends up sitting there. But has it ever been tested? If we go down, like, do we know it's mud? Or is it the organic remains of the light civilization that built our city, which we as light workers are the incarnated souls that are here to uncover that again and bring about the return of the sun? That's my theory.
Nice. Very interesting.
What do you think?
I mean, there's heaps of stories about a second sun, you know, and even a black sun that still might be there. The real sun, you know, black hole sun, the Soundgarden,
the sun worshipping,
the dark night satellite, sun worshipping, the vapor canopy. You know, there was a vapor canopy before the flood, and they say that back then that was when everything grew bigger, everything, and basically, as far as we know, it was it was just light all the time because of all that they say, because of all the mist in the atmosphere. But yeah, that's when everything was massive, wasn't it? I mean, when we eat food, right? What's it called? It's a diet.
Yep.
So is food bad for, is the whole
Yep.
concept of food, was that introduced as well as something bad? I
Well, it's
mean,
the
and
descending. We descended
yeah,
from
yeah,
light as
yeah,
food
lowering,
to meat
yeah,
as
yeah,
food
getting heavier and heavier.
because we're so desperate. We were so
Uh,
starving, Campbell. We were starved of light. We were hungry for the
well,
first time. Hunger for the first time.
mm, it says in the Bible at the start of it, it says, the berries and the leaves and the herbs will be it says will be your meat. And then after the flood, it says now the creepy, crawly things and the animals will be your meat.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I've always thought as well. Is if we didn't eat, I think we probably would have maybe had some berries or herbs every now and again, just for health type of stuff. Just like not a meal or anything, but so
Biological
I mean
medicine.
that would make sense as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. You might whatever be low in something, so you have a few
Yeah.
leaves, but it's more that you're just putting that stuff back in your body, that energy that you need. You're not eating, for energy, if you know what I mean. It's a different kind of a thing. And of
Complementary to
course, the no
photosynthesis.
bathrooms.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we know that if you add different things to the water and that with the hydroponic setup, you'll get better results under the light.
Yep.
It's very interesting. It also made me think of that map that 1497. Is it Monty's Planisphere, the one that shows the ring, the Antarctic ring, but it's all land.
Yep.
If you had two suns, would there be more land? Would that cause more heat, or would that mean the Antarctic ring could be melted?
Yes,
And
exactly.
so there could have been travel in and out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this
Well.
so the snow, the ice, that barrier, that buffer potentially wouldn't exist with two suns. That's a new phenomenon which has put a boundary around us and cut us off from the whole realm.
Exactly. So yeah, with two suns, I mean, and it wouldn't, because I was thinking about the clothes. When you mentioned the women's clothes, they're all so layered, right? They have like their 15 layers on. So with two suns, obviously it couldn't be that it made it hotter. So I wonder if it would be cooler, but just more diffused or whatever. But because it was more constant on the outside, it could definitely melt that, I think.
Well,
I mean, there's just so many, sayings, right? The light against the dark. That's every movie ever made, pretty much, right?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And like the the heat is an interesting one because we know that for the last, I'm going to say just from the last 300 years, they have been fucking with the atmospheric weather. So they have had certainly in our lifetime, they've put a big push on basically heating up this realm. Like it's not a natural cycle, I don't believe, that we're in. So the heat from the sun has been somehow emphasized, mirrored, captured, like magnified out. The two suns, because in Tartaria, we find no evidence of, people like in desert regions. They're always in fantastic cityscapes full of water and everything's very beautiful and gigantic and harmonized. You don't see this like polarization between hot climates and cold climates. We haven't seen a shift there. The buildings are the same. The tech is the same. The style is the same. They're not adapting for hot or cold weather, from what I can see.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, we wouldn't have seasons anymore, would we? Really, it'd just be a constant.
No time.
Yeah, and it says in the Aurolinda book, it says before the deluge they didn't record time. They said one year just went to the next, basically, because you didn't need to, because there were no days. It's a bit hard to, right? There's no days.
And all those sorry, go on.
No, you go.
All those structures that they built, those ancient structures that pay homage to the solstice or the equinox or the movement sun, they create those beautiful structures, and then the sunbeam will come through once a year or whatever. Like, we know that a lot of those have been moved and deconstructed and reconstructed. Have they been deconstructed and reconstructed to accommodate for this idea of only one sun, to give us the notion that there's only ever been one sun? And weirdly enough, I don't know if you have done this before, but I have spent 3 weeks I've spent 3 weeks like staring at the sun. I did 3 weeks of staring at the moon, and then I didn't go to bed until the sun came up. This was on my farm, and I would stare at it as it was rising. And as you stared at it, it like emits waves of color. Like, it will do red and then green and then blue. It's really hard to keep staring because it hurts your eyes. But if you stare long enough, the sun turns into a black circle. And when it turns into a black circle, you can stare at it. It doesn't hurt your eyes anymore. And I think that's really interesting. Is that black circle the black sun? Is that the false sun? Is that the real sun? Is that a doorway or portal? What is that black circle that the sun becomes if you stare at it? Either way, if you stare at that sun when it's rising the whole way through that process, which maybe takes like 10 minutes, it's good for your being. Like, it's a massive hit of light into your whole biology, I guess. But the sun, I can only imagine one way that this civilization could have collapsed, and that was to bring about the darkness. And we literally, metaphorically and literally, now integrate and live in the darkness. And this whole truth-seeking push has been for us as light workers to expose the dark and bring about the light again. Is that not this whole push here? Isn't that what we're doing ultimately in all of our wanting to understand and expose it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Chicken Little, right? The sky is falling. There's so many stories about, the sky falling, and if you're in a light and suddenly you're in black, I mean, that's like the sky falling, right? The sun disappearing. And there's also, sleep. If this Archon invaded and it wants to control us and the realm, like you said, what's happening when we're asleep, right?
Why do they put us to sleep?
We're getting checked by AI. Is that because AI can't handle the whole planet? They can only do half of it at a time?
Yeah.
Or is it because it wants us to be asleep so it can check what we're going to do or what we've done and get data off us? That would be another thing as far as the control system, right? When people are awake, if we're always awake, then obviously, they wouldn't be able to get in.
They can't put the dark
there's
over
a
our
lot
eyes.
to that,
If we don't sleep, they can't deceive us. Darkness is deception. Sleeping is a deception to us.
What's the big saying at the moment? Well, the last 2 years, right? Wake up.
Wake up. Remember who you are.
And I was thinking as well, everyone's sort of saying mourning, and obviously mourning, right? And wake as well, right? Both to do with funerals and death.
Yeah.
But maybe morning, because people are saying, don't say, good morning because it's the start of the day, but maybe morning is the end of the night.
Yeah.
So the nighttime is the morning.
So, yes.
Morning that they have no light.
Yes. Yeah. So they introduce the darkness. They tell us, they introduce sleeping in that darkness. Very similar to that movie Dark City, which I talk about quite a lot. And when people were sleeping, they shift the cities around. They did all their deception, their disorientation, and people would wake up with new bodies and new names and like in new apartments, and they wouldn't even know. They just wake up and they'd be like spending. Now, interestingly enough, what else did they do? Not only did they split our light quadrant in half, which caused a massive chain of effects on our vehicle and our frequency band. They literally shift frequency bands. And if we were there to exist during that time, either we would have somehow imploded to that. Something about our vehicles had a strong reaction that killed us, basically. And let's just talk about the mud flood in a minute, because that is fascinating. Or we were basically put to sleep. And that sleeping process became ritualized and habitualized and part of our cultural process. We suddenly didn't know anything other than that. And in fact, they push it so hard. You've got to get 8 hours of sleep. It's really healthy. You have to do it. If you don't sleep enough, you're going to degenerate. If you don't sleep enough, you'll never like regenerate yourself. And it's really important. Everyone does it. You have to sleep. You have to be, you know, and like it's a really interesting. They really hone that sleeping thing into our culture as if it's just like, without it, you die. That's what they tell us all the time. If you don't sleep enough, you will die. You will go mad. You will die. Now, I am definitely a light worker of this culture. I have said it my whole life. I know it. I don't know what that really means, because what do we know? But I am not one that sleeps much. I never have slept much. I don't want to sleep much. I have my best thinking time at nighttime when all the electricity is off. I love being awake at night. I love doing my creativity at night. I love speaking at night, having my best conversations. I tend to not sleep much. As a child, I didn't want to sleep. I would literally survive this lifetime 3-4 hours. The older I get, the more it gets honed into me. You know, you're going to get old and wrinkled if you don't go to sleep. You won't regenerate your body. But, you know, I love sleeping only because of my dreamscape. And something I believe of the light working creed is that we don't get caught in infrared when we dream. No, we don't stay in Herderson. We're not just talking about admin. We don't get caught in infrared only occasionally where we have a nightmarish experience. You know, when you get like paralyzed and you can't get out of it, you know you're paralyzed. That's when you get caught in infrared for a second. My dreamscape always takes me to the fantastical beast realm. You know, I'm always there. We're talking, flying, beautiful, amazing. I'm always having a massive adventure every single night. I love that side of my sleep. Point is, I don't sleep. I have a very active dreamscape. And is that true of you too, Cambell? How is your sleeping patterns?
I don't remember all my dreams, but I don't sleep much.
Yeah.
I think I got like an hour last night. Had to get up, and then I literally did an interview and lay down for 40 minutes, and here I am again. So I've never been a big sleeper for sure.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, it's so hammered into babies, isn't it? They have to get this, they have to get that.
Yep.
But when you look into the studies and people that actually, you know, sleep, you know, deprivate themselves, or they do studies, they start seeing lights in their head.
Yep.
They start getting all these really, really light visions and different colors and like almost like psychedelic type stuff going off, which is interesting, isn't it? That is interesting. And I was thinking too, you know, I mean, at nighttime, what do all, you know, indigenous, you know, sort of peoples do? They all sit around fires, right, around a light.
And we gravitate.
We're clearly not. Yeah, well, we're not designed for the dark. Clearly, our senses don't work very well in the dark.
No, we can't see. We can't see in the dark. We're scared of the dark. The dark scares people. It takes a sovereign being to sit out in the dark all night by themselves in a vast landscape. Like it does. We're very unadjusted to the dark. We can't see. We can't thrive in that space. And actually, interestingly, for the light worker community, I think another characteristic which would make total sense is that we hate bright light. Like we love the sunlight, but we hate bright light. I mean, I never turn on ceiling lights. I never turn on, like, I hate going into malls or anything with that fucking neon or office blocks, that light, cold blue light. I will always gravitate towards ones that like mirror the sun, fireplaces, candles, salt lamps, warm, low, yellowish light. That's always been a thing with me in light and nighttime, always. I hate those bright, cool, the fake light, the false light. Interestingly, the light false that you would say mirrors light, the moon. Sorry?
Well, yeah, false light.
Yeah,
We're
false
told
light.
Avoid the false light. I mean, it's interesting that, you know, you look in cities and half the buildings are glass.
Yeah.
Yet they line them all with, you know, fluorescent lighting. Why aren't they using the outdoor lights? You know, when we see, you know, like the, what are they called in the pavement? Oh God, now I've forgotten the name. The bits of glass that shoot light in under the pavement to get, you know, into the backs of rooms and stuff. they had that. So it looks like, they were actually trying to get light from the sun in, because you look at all the palaces, they've got big courtyards, right?
Yeah.
What that means is you've got windows on both sides of the structure, right? So everything was kind of designed to get natural light in, obviously, rather than electric light. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we know fluorescent lights are bad for your health. They just are.
Computer
Something
light.
else I thought of when you were talking is, terror, right? Terrifying. Terror. What's terror? It's the land.
Yep, terror.
Terror.
Mm-hmm.
So is that why it's terrifying? Because when it happened, the land changed, the terror changed.
Terra firma. Absolutely.
It's terrifying.
Yep.
Terra
Yep.
firma.
That's the word for the earth of our culture, terra firma. And we are heading towards Gaia, which is a different word altogether. Like the ascension timeline with this plane, this realm is Gaia. But terra firma, terra is the landmass now.
Terror.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we get these words, terror, petrified. I just petrified it's a fascinating word to me now. Like they're terrifying words. And you're so right about the light in this light. See, if we take away the word Tartaria and replace it with light civilization, like a word for a light civilization, and I don't know what the Latin or the etymology of Tartaria is. We should probably look that up. But it does have the word art in it, and that always feels good to me. Tartaria has art in it. Earth has art in it. Heart has art in it. They all have art in
Fart.
it. Fart, very important. But you know what? I don't think Tartarians farted because they didn't eat food.
No.
Fart's a new one.
Imagine that.
No digestive. No
civilization
digestive
without
process.
fart jokes, man.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Or poo jokes.
Poo joke, all poo jokes. I know, right? But I mean, it's interesting because, and Paul Cook's been doing a bit of work on the cathedrals and what's underneath them. I think Mind Unveiled as well did one, and they were both talking about having massive cisterns, right? Which these are these things that we find everywhere. These curved tunnel type things, right? And they're made out of curved brick ceilings, and basically they're all saying that it's for storing water. And so we have all these waterways, right? But we've never really found anything that looks like a sewerage plant, or could be, nothing that's taking water. It's all being recycled and reused and in the city and pumped back up. There's no wastewater, right?
That's right.
We haven't seen anything like that in where we look. No. So there's no plumbing going out of the houses. The only plumbing is to shoot water to the fountains.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
which is really interesting because we'd literally have seen we literally would have seen giant toilets and giant bathrooms. We would have seen the same scale.
Well, exactly right.
And what's interesting
giant petrified poos.
Yeah, exactly. Fossilized poos. Silicon poos. Silicon crystal poos. But interestingly enough, like the architecture, you're so right. Like it's designed to bring sunlight into underground spaces. It's designed to bring sunlight underground or into the darker building structures. So, and all the churches and cathedrals do this, that all their spaces are to capture sun rays, sunbeams, sunlight going through. Now, interestingly enough, the living waters, what are living waters? They are water. They are water full of light. It's light water. They are water that's been bathed in. There is a living water process that is alive. It's got light in it. And interestingly, it quite often will come in from the underground and up, like the underground and up. So this realm of ours, when I first started looking at all this decades ago, I was quite captivated by the idea of Middle Earth, or that there's a sun in the center of the earth. Now, of course, that was on a round earth model, but if you take the flat earth or the flat realm model, but then you have this underbody of it, the underneath of that, whatever that, could there not be a light source? I mean, we so often see these structures like the pyramids and Tartarian structures beaming light up and out. Like if we had a light source coming up from under the flat realm that somehow was combined, maybe there's a sun under there, maybe the sun is under there, I don't know, but anyway, like the waters from the underground could easily have been bathed in that light, which is why water was so important to the realm, the living waters, the light realm.
And then bring it up.
Just thinking out loud.
I mean, well, no, there's a lot of people have spoken about that, about the sun being projected from the North Pole, basically what we're told is the North Pole, right? There's supposed to be a big hole there, and it's projected up and out. And I mean, that if that's true, then is that all they needed to change, was something at the source? So instead of getting 2 projections, we're getting 1.
Yeah.
You know, and at the moment, of course, you know, we've got, you know, Bill Gates, you know, was out a few years saying he wants to, you know, block out the sun. We heard all these sun machines, the talk about the sun machines, chemtrails, which some people have said, you know, with global warming, if you put certain chemicals up there, they act like a magnifying glass, right? So
absolutely.
It changes the heat, changes the light that's coming through. I mean, we know, I mean, sun worship, right? And how often have we heard that it's actually, you know, some of these people were actually worshipping, you know, the black sun, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Like that sun worship culture runs so strong through the satanic agenda and the Masonic agenda. The ones behind the Great Deception, the ones behind and the ones behind them are of the dark. They are that draconian reptilian, like that black octopus, that gray, that what's the black substance? The goo, the black goo, like it's all black, void of light. That black goo is like a dense form of absence of light, you know, like, and it's all magnetic, and and like all of that stuff is coming from this notion of the satanic darkness, the entities that see in the dark, that practice in the dark, that kill and maim and do all their things in the dark, that they're constantly, when a race is taken out of the light by 50% out of the light and then put to sleep and then put into the darkness, so that the whole time on this realm, always half the population are in that stasis. They're in literal stasis where they are doing nothing and creating nothing. So there's no power in that for the light workers or the creators. There's only power in that for the dark workers, the darkness, you know, they're utilizing that in their process somehow. They know this. The sun is always, throughout all the esoteric, satanic modalities, practices, theologies, books, speakers, whatever, the sun, Saturn, sun, Saturn, sun, the black sun, the dark sun, the black, it's always present. Like, I really am starting to totally believe in this theory that we had 2 suns, and that this coming, not only did they replace that, when they remove, replace, hid, whatever happened to the sun, by taking one away, that ricocheted across all realms. Like, it wasn't just our known realm, like it had an impact across all realms, which is why when we like tune into this whole process we're in now, it's so often referred to over and over again that, like, that, you know, the whole, they say universe, but the whole multiverse is focused in on this moment here. The whole multiverse is going to be affected by this moment here. All living beings across all verses are going to be impacted. That what happened here had a huge ricocheting effect everywhere. And something about the earth beings, us, that civilization integrating one half darkness, had a massive impact on all multiverses. And I've always been told that they introduced a weapon, a great weapon, a weapon that was so powerful that no one could stop it and nothing could change it. And that weapon was the darkness, the removal of light.
I mean, how many songs are there about waiting for, you know, the sun, right? Here comes the sun, waiting for the sun. I was thinking as well, like, what do they call, you know, if you're talking the ages, right? The bronze, silver, blah, blah, blah. They have the golden age, right? What color is the sun?
Absolutely.
Golden.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, because we know that, yeah, half the realm's underground, right? We know this is becoming, you know, pretty apparent. and that there's more than one species, shall we say, down here. So are they literally from the below realms, right? And we're told, you know, about upper and lower realms and all these old books, and the lower is always the dark.
Yeah.
And, you know, is that what separated us, that they couldn't come up here?
Yep. They
know,
couldn't.
and we couldn't go down there.
Yes.
Then at some time now we've got a bit of each. Now we can actually intermingle, right? And they can get into our realm and stuff.
Yes.
And affect it.
Yes.
Sorry.
Well, that makes so much sense, Cambell, because we can't see in the dark. If we live in the dark, we actually die. We go mad first, but then we'll die. And what do they do with prisoners to punishment? They put them in isolation chambers in the dark. Like the darkness is a weapon against us, and they can't exist in the light. Like if you put like you know, these underground creatures and bring them up to the full sunlight, they perish. Hello, the vampires. Hello, the reptilians. Hello. Yep, the werewolf, the transformation with the moonlight. Yep. Always this. Yes. And the moon's so synonymous with witches, is it not? Is the moon not so synonymous with that sort of bit
the
iffy
picture, the moon with the lady, you know, on the broomstick going across the moon?
Exactly. Covered in black at night, you know, using these witchy sort of like negatively opposed spells. I'm not saying all witches are negative, of course. I'm just saying that there's a metaphoric alignment to that nighttime in the moon.
And look what they wear.
Black.
They all wear black, right? Witches, vampires, you know, all the dudes in suits. Like, they all wear the darkness.
Yep.
I keep thinking of that band, The Darkness, every time I say it. Remember them?
Yeah.
Those crazy 70s dudes.
Oh, well, heavy metal. That whole heavy fucking metal world, it's like music, that vibration, that whole thing has got that darkness in it. It
dark.
does. Yeah.
It has. It has. It definitely has. And there's a lot of moon references in there, isn't there? You know, lots of references about nighttime and all that kind of stuff. You know, bow to hell, you know, shout at the moon, bark at the moon. Like there's just tons of them in that kind of
Black
genre.
Sabbath.
And it's that dark energy. And Black Sabbath, they all wear dark clothes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see a heavy metal t-shirt that's lime green, do you? It's got to be black, or you can't wear it.
I was just saying, like, I love, I also agree with you about there being an underground and an above ground. And that can exist on a flat earth model, definitely. And it could be a flip over inversion, you know, it could just be boop. And then on the inverted side, the mirror side, you have this dark realm made up of the infrared, made up of creatures of the dark, made up of creatures that live and see in the dark. Now, when something happened to the light source here, and they managed to switch off half of the light quadrant to the life force and integrated the moon and the darkness up into our realm, then we have had what we have termed as a hijacking. We use the word hijacking, we use the word reset, but at that point of that integration, suddenly the light civilization was gone. Like I keep wanting to say vaporized, like literally. And like if you reverse that same thing, like if you took vampires and put them into full sunlight, what happens to them in all the movies?
That's what they show us, isn't it? In the movies, turn to dust or something.
They turn to
dust.
And
like
Pompeii,
Pompeii was buried, and that was ash. That was ash from a volcano. They tell us, and it looked like mud.
That's actually what made me think of it.
And back to the light with Tartaria. What do we see in the pictures of the world's fairs? I mean, they are ridiculously covered in lights, right? Yeah. And of course, you know, one of my favorite things are the street lights.
Yeah.
Why are there so many of them? Like literally in the photos you look, they're like 3 meters apart, and they just, there's so many of them. Why is that? Is that so that they were just trying to recreate the light?
Yeah, that's what I think.
And of course they couldn't see, but you know, so at night time they just, it all went. That's why we have these light cities, you know?
Yep, exactly. That's what I thought, Cambell. I think that the intense amount of light that was suddenly coming off these buildings that we see as classically Tartarian with those world fairs was them actually desperately kind of counteracting this darkness. And of course it wasn't true, it was false light, so they couldn't do it. It didn't work. It didn't allow them to exist still, but it probably was their one step towards counteracting this. Now, if we go back to vampires, when they hit the light, we either see them turn to dust or they melt. But basically they just, so we can very easily conceptualize that would also have happened to us in reverse. So we look at this agenda now, and what are they doing? They're basically, you know, being very clear that they're altering the whole like light quadrant of the plane more and more and more and more and more, putting more and more shit into the atmosphere to make it darker and darker and darker. And of course, at nighttime, what also was synonymous with going to bed at nighttime? Sex. Like sex became a dominant part of a nighttime activity. Now, I don't know if the Tartarian culture had the same process with sexuality. I would say not. And I would say it was definitely a different process than what we know it to be today. But at nighttime, that sexual depravity, that perversion, that push for sexual, I love sexual.
The carnal side. That they push it.
Yeah. That carnal energetic sort of became synonymous with nighttime. That sort of lower frequency behavior where people drink and party and you know, fuck and fight, like it's sort of all there in the dark, you know. It does.
Lunatics.
The lunatic and the lunatic asylum. So that's another whole like tangent to connect with
nice. Yeah.
I mean, what
is full of people losing their minds, because of this, because of the lunar.
Potentially.
And also there's many stories of the moon being introduced. It says in all the old books, it says that when there was a vapor canopy, there was no moon.
Yeah,
like they say that. And there's all these stories, you know. I think the Africans say it was rolled across the sky, and some people say it was an egg, and all this. And basically all these stories of saying it wasn't there, and suddenly it was there. So,
yes, Ramtha says the same. Now, Cambell, what happened when the moon arrived? What happened to our programming? What did they do with the moon? Why is the moon so famous? Because they fucking landed on it. And what did the moon represent to our programming? That space existed, that the moon was a part of space. It was the first planetary body that we were going to land on, that the moon became synonymous with space program. The moon represented the whole programming around the round Earth space model. And it literally took that inner space out of us and put it out there somewhere. And we landed on the fucking moon, which we didn't. But, you know, that was the story of the whole beginning of the space program.
Well, if it was two suns, they couldn't say we're going to land on the sun, could they? So that's an interesting point, you know. It's sort of part of the great deception. And, of course, what is space? It's infinite darkness.
Infinite fucking unknown fucking darkness. Infinite darkness. Now, imagine, like, if we were in a situation where we'd never seen the dark, and we didn't have things like light bulbs or any sort of technology that, like, lit up. You know, we really captured the sunlight. That was just 24/7, like it was there all the time. We didn't have to have an intermediate, you know, we didn't have to have a medium to filter it through, you know, and suddenly the darkness descended. Imagine that, Cambell. Like, it would have been, are you there? You're frozen. Oh, I may have lost Cambell.
Yep, I'm still here. I can hear you.
Yeah. In that moment, it would have been pitch black. Like, it would have been a thick, dense, unknown quantity, as if we were floating around in space. That thick, dark, like so dark you couldn't even see your fingers in front of your face dark. That would have been so fucking terrifying. Unbelievable. I couldn't think of a worst or more intense weapon than that. And now, of course, the darkness has become a metaphor for everything evil and fucked up and perverse and wrong on this realm.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's a Vin Diesel movie, I think. I can't remember what it's called, but it's literally about they live in a world that's just dark.
Yep.
I might have to check it out. See what the backstory to that is. But also like sunscreen. What does sunscreen do? Reflects the sun, so it can't touch your skin.
I never wear sunscreen.
You know, so no, I think I've worn it twice back in that.
I've got some sunspots now, but that's because they're fucked with the sun. You know, I don't think essentially the sun was hot. I don't think it has a burning heat to it. I think that's come after.
Yeah, well, that would explain a lot, because this is one of our biggest questions, isn't it? It's the clothes. They've all got these clothes, like so many layers and stuff. It's so clearly they weren't having hot days. And then we have all the stories of, up in Siberia of, which is now frozen tundra, that that was tropical. There were, when I listed food and it's tropical plants.
Yeah.
And we know that the Arctic, there was no ice at the edges. Oh, now you froze on. There you are. So again, with 12 hours to refreeze, would we even have ice at the extremities?
I didn't think so.
If it's the middle and the outside.
And this also is itself to the notion of where we get these giant animals.
And what are they protecting?
Full sun. We've got a lag between us, Cambell. Sorry, we had to pause there because we were lagging. So we're back. We're talking about this, explaining the giant animals. And so we've got this false notion of dinosaurs, but we've got like evidence of giant trees and giant petrified animals in our landscape. So everything in full sunlight 24/7, no, we didn't have time, would have grown and grown and grown and grown. Now, imagine if there was at some point more than two suns. Like, imagine if we go right back to, because the Tartarian civilization was relatively small compared to the giants that came before them, and the giant tree giants. Like, they were like 100 feet, 100 versions of us or something like this. Like, we're on the lowest spectrum. I believe our civilization has descended the lowest of all we are at the lowest point. That's why this ascension back up to the light is occurring, because we have descended so far. We can't go further than this. We're literally now perfectly integrated with the dark side of the earth, the dark side of the moon, the dark side of the sun, whatever it is. And literally we are in the ascension journey up through the light spectrum, up through the light rays spectrum, back to full connection with the ether.
Well, I mean, what are we, right? Humans. Hue, aren't we going up through the colours of the spectrum?
Light spectrum. Yep, exactly. So what happened when this happened to us so dramatically, Cambell? This is the last point, is that it literally created a fucking time loop. Taking away the sun, descending us into darkness, introducing the night, created a time loop that in essence has controlled and programmed our entire reality. Once they could set up the boundaries of time, they set up the boundaries of space, time and space, one and the same. They set it up with night and day, moon, the sun, time and space. They set that up. They put us in a loop, an incarnation loop, a cyclic process, a loop. And now, I don't know, I haven't studied mind control techniques like hardcore, but I've read a lot about it. And I can guess that you need to have that parameter of a loop going on in the brain the way the brain is wiring and firing in order to actually manipulate it, in order to actually program and control it. And they set it up with a time loop by removing the sun, introducing the night, introducing day, introducing time and space. And we've been trapped.
Just imagine never having the thought of what am I going to do tomorrow, because there is none. Like, it would just be like an infinite whatever now, right? Like, it would be, it's just a completely different way of thinking. But that's really interesting, the loop, right? I mean, we wake up every morning, right? You know, a lot of people say we're reborn every day, right? Because that's what it does. It puts us on that recycle, and then of course they can introduce, you know, repetition, jobs, and all this kind of stuff, and then you're completely in a loop.
It makes us.
If there was no nighttime, when are they going to tell you to turn up to work?
Yeah.
Because there's no time, right?
That's right. They need a container.
It would be very hard to sort of.
They need a container,
which is their time and their space. That makes a box.
Night and day. They need that container in order to enslave us. Because if we had no notion of time, we were completely nourished. Our light quadrant internally was completely full and in abundance instead of scarcity, because we're always starving now. We're always starving because we haven't got enough light coming through us. And we are little plants in the dark that can't grow big anymore. We're not getting our photosynthesizers going on. They imagine if we didn't have any of that going on, and we didn't have to eat, we didn't have to sleep, we didn't have to deal with health issues. Like, how could they control us? We would have been the giants of the land, the milk and honey, as Ramtha would say. We would have not been controllable at all, because we wouldn't have to fight for survival. And now we're in a time loop that puts us in a fight for survival, where you are, as you and JC were talking about, obliged to live in this loop where you cannot tune into your intuition or your heart's truth. And when all that's gone, you would be magnificent master creators again. Would you not be creating the most extraordinary masterpieces of art and literature and music and architecture and science and fucking all sorts of things? Because we wouldn't have to do anything else. We would have been the gods, the Thors, the Asgard,
the creator gods,
the gods of all those beautiful gods that we see mirrored in all these, in mythology, throughout all of these cultures, and then of all of our movies. Those gods were giant. They were of the light. They had magical properties to them. They never seemed to need much. They were unenslavable. The darkness enslaves us. What the fuck do we do about all this, Campbell? Like, what can we do about it? Because we can't replace the full quadrant of light. Like, that's integrated now into our culture and realm. We can put every effort we can find into upping our light quadrant.
Yeah, well, we can expel more, but I mean, there's been a lot of interesting videos coming out showing two suns. You know, we've got sun dogs. You know, a lot of people are talking about, is there a second sun? So is there a second sun coming back? Is this part of the cycle maybe? You know, is the bottom cycle where we've got the most dark, the top cycle where it's all sun, and the middle two are sort of, you know, a bit of each? Because it's interesting, because everything, all baddies come from the dark and underground and these, you know, dark caves, or, you know, it's always, isn't it? It's always, and they're always wearing black, and they're always associated with, you know, rats or spiders or, you know, whatever, snakes. It's very interesting, and it's definitely in our history. The whole, you know, the sun disappearing, the moon appearing, all this kind of. I keep thinking of that scene in Star Wars. I don't know if you've seen Star Wars, but that the original one, Luke's on his home planet, and he, you know, finishes his chores and goes outside and looks up, and what does he see? Two suns. yeah, the two suns, you see that a lot in movies, you know.
You do. And you're so right. There is my channels are flooded with videos of two suns. People taking videos, not here in Australia, on the other side of the world. I noticed, I was looking at where these locations were, but there's all these videos of literally videos people are making with their phones of two fucking suns. There is so much indication that there is another sun coming back, like the veils, like the density's lifting, or maybe it never went anywhere, it was just covered up or removed from our sight, or something about our perception was shifted. Maybe it wasn't like this full-on thing that happened like to our sun more than it did to our perception, our eyes, us as the vehicle that perceives it all.
Or if they somehow have turned the two suns into one, and that's what the black hole is. Yeah. The second sun, maybe, I don't know. Yeah. You know, the contrast, and that's why it's hotter than it should be.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe they
and that, so they bring the moon in to balance it out. You know, like you say, exactly. It needs to be balanced, right?
Yes.
And that's holding it there. So if the moon moves, then maybe it'll start to come back, or it's losing its orbit or whatever, and that's why we're starting to see two suns again.
It's going to be fascinating, you know, like fuck watching the water, watch the fucking sun. But
watch the sun. Another thing is in all these old pictures and old paintings, have you seen them? And people are always like this, pointing upwards. You see, like there's tons of them. They're always pointing up.
Yep. Always looking up. Agreed. Now we've got also this notion of the mud flood being our remains. What say you on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit gross, but I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, the whole DNA story, right? The whole genetic manipulation, the children underground, the orphan trains, the incubators, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, if they could just get the genetic material from there, you know, from the clay of the earth. Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Maybe too many of us got wiped out, and they needed to repopulate, and they needed to repopulate with people that were, you know, raised in the dark, so that they, you know, so that we could never be our full potential, right? And they bring them up here, and they're the orphan trains and all that kind of stuff. So it would definitely supply the genetic material they need.
Yep,
definitely. And we know that underground that's full of, you know, labs and all types of stuff down there. So I mean, yeah, right.
And Campbell, like
it's pretty interesting.
The mud is concentrated in the cities. Like we don't see the mud flood effect up against landscapes so much. It's always based on the city. Now I don't know if that's because it gives us a contrast. Like literally, these buildings are like dug out of, you know, unlevel ground, but like if we talk about the mud flood, the most obvious thing to me is all of our focus is on the cities. Now that's where all the people would have been. So if they all disintegrated in one go or something happened, they will have fallen on the cityscapes more than anywhere else. That would have been the densest population. So all of that mud flooding all through the buildings, it just seems to make sense to me that the billions of us perished in a moment.
We don't see mountain ranges and big rocks and that where there's a lot more dirt on one side than the other, which is what would happen if we're talking big floods, wouldn't it? You know, obviously, you know, it would get caught up, and we don't see that.
Yep.
We only see that in cities, so that's another good point. And of course, we have, you know, civilizations that have just disappeared. You know, we've got Toltecs, and there's other ones where we have these, you know, they find the ruin. It's like, well, where'd the people go? They just disappeared.
Yep.
How does that happen, right? How does that happen?
Yeah.
So yeah, the light, the dark. I mean, it's just such a theme, isn't it? The dark and the light, positive and negative, yin yang. We've got the maps. I know you could be onto something there, Cal. I think you know, the lunatic asylums.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all you could tie a lot in.
Yeah. I mean, like one thing, when I got taught how to use my psychic abilities, how to use my intuition, I did a 2-year course in alchemy. And the way that I was trained was to basically, it's the study of what is obvious. Like when you learn to use your intuition or your psychic abilities, you just tune into what is obvious. Like, and you allow your imagination to speak to you about what's obvious. So when I look at all the work we do about Tartaria, there are a few things that are just fucking obvious. One, the mud is in the cities. That's just an obvious fact. My eyes tell me that. You know, we're not studying the landscapes on the same way. One, the cities are gigantic, so we know it's obvious that they've been built by bigger people. It's also obvious to us that there's no bodies, but there's a mud flood. There's no bodies, but the cities are buried in something, but there's no bodies. We know that there's a lot of people because these civilizations are vast and across the whole realm. We know that if we look at what's obvious between our language, it's always light versus dark. It's always light versus dark. And it's obvious to us that we don't do well in the dark. In fact, we so don't do well in the dark that we have to actually go to sleep and shut ourselves off from the dark. We actually can't exist in the dark. We don't get nourished by it. We don't thrive in it. We can't see in it. We don't enjoy it. It doesn't increase our anything in us. It does not give to us anything. It's the darkness is like a dead force in our life. Like electricity, it doesn't give anything to us anymore. It does the opposite. It depletes us. It depletes us. Whereas it is obvious to us that the sun gives us life. And it's obvious to me that the Tartarian culture is based on light. Therefore, it is a civilization of a light civilization. We refer to ourselves as light workers. Therefore, would it not make sense? We are the ascended, reincarnated souls of that civilization, bringing back the truth and returning at the moment that the sun returns, the return of the sun, the son of man, the return of the son of man.
I agree. SONSUN. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Is that what's happening? Is that what are we? Is that why we're here to facilitate? Because that's what's the other thing that we keep saying is, raise the vibration, right? Keep the vibrations high. And we hear, if you're not of the right vibration, you're not going to make it. Is that because the sun, but it's going to be, obviously it's going to be different, right? Less burning, higher vibration, different spectrum. And if you're not of the right vibration, then maybe you'll explode. Turn into ash.
Reverse, Campbell, exactly.
In reverse.
So whatever happened to us when the darkness is removed, then those beings of the dark they'll have the same, something that will happen to them.
Back down. There's that's that story in the Bible as well of, the dark will be locked up in hell or whatever it calls it, for, what is it, 200 years or so many hundred years or something, or no, 1,000 years. 1,000 years. 1,000. And then it'll be let loose on the earth for 200 or something. Yeah. Interesting, right? And then people are saying, was that 1,000 years, the 1,000 years that maybe we've lost or whatever, was that when the darkness was locked up, or was that the reign of Christ, right? Who was the sun? Again,
Christos,
right?
Christ,
Christos and the sun. The 1,000-year reign of the sun. Is that what it is? The reign, we had it for 1,000 years, and then and it could even be a cycle. What if if there's two suns, but they're not on a perfect cycle, and they hit a point where one goes behind the other one for a couple of hundred years? And I think you're onto something there, Cal. That's very good.
Well, I think essentially, the Tartarian focus of ours, this whole deep dive into Tartaria, and we're going to keep the fucking name, everyone, because Tartaria has the word art in it, and art is what's so important to the imagination of all this process. But let's define it and refine it, that civilization we are studying a light civilization. We're studying a light civilization, and that's a fucking truth there. And if we're studying a light civilization as light workers, it's because we are here to watch the return of the sun, the lightness. That is the ascension process. So everything we deep dive to in Tartaria now, we can cross-reference it with our discoveries and our information, cross-referencing with the light. with with that concept in our heads, that terminology in our heads, and see now how Tartaria wires and fires from that that foundational perspective, that container. And I think we are going to really quickly, and if we want to reintroduce the crystal cities, Campbell, because that was our first instinct, that there were crystal cities connected to all of this, that would be cities of the light, crystalline in light frequency. So all of the Tartarian, the crystal cities, and the light and the sun, it's all one container. And if we can start to process this information through that container, fuck me, we are going to understand some stuff that we haven't understood yet.
Yeah, definitely, you know, and if we get two suns back again, is that the change in frequency, you know, because we're always talking about, you know, will these crystal cities just appear?
Yes.
Is that it? Are they going to turn back to a crystal from where they are when we get the right frequency down here?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. All right, buddy.
So I guess we've got to hold the light, right? Hold the energy high.
100%. And all of your work that you do is Spiral Up. Campbell's got another channel, everyone, called Spiral Up. He does some fantastic interviews there, and all that work that happens, and all JCK's work with the healers, all that work that happens is all about increasing the light quadrant in us. And I guess that's what it's all about. Returning to the land, it would increase the light quadrant. Growing your own food would increase the light quadrant. Drinking living waters, the sea, would increase the light quadrant. CBD oil, I would say, increases the light quadrant. Essential oils, the smell of essential oils increases the light quadrant. The shift in and warm lights would increase the light quadrant. Being out in the sun would increase the light quadrant. And also our whole getting out of that time loop is really hard fucking work. It's so hard when you're dependent on a wage and then you're obliged to that wage, and it's so hard to get out of and trust and have faith. But that time loop where we're talking about obligation and not living in your intuition and your heart, that's complicated shit. But I think it's like one of the last parts of the unwinding for the light workers to get out of that loop. And so
I was just going to quickly add, you know, if this isn't, you know, if we weren't eating, how people healing themselves, right? But they fast, they stop eating, and everything heals.
Water. Yep. I'm a big fan. Yeah. I'm doing water fast really soon. I'm a big fan of water fast. I've been doing it all for 20 years now. Yep. Cleans out all the toxic shit for sure.
Does, resets things, which is interesting, right? And you know, whenever people want sun, right, they have a whole holiday in the sun. I mean, no one goes for a holiday place, yeah, let's go hang there, you know, it's always the sun. And that's what we're chasing, right? Like, you know, if you can afford a house that can see the sun, whoa, gee.
Yep. 100%. Yep.
And it's interesting. Wow. All right. Well, thanks for that. That was a very nice, interesting little thing.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, everyone, look, you know, that was just a working theory. But I feel like Campbell and I, obviously, we live and breathe these thought processes because, you know, we're so fascinated and so interested in putting our mindscape behind understanding what Tartaria is, what this light civilization was. It was an epiphany for me today or yesterday to actually connect light workers to those that came from the light civilization, which was in essence Tartaria, as we can prove throughout all of our obvious evidence there when it comes to the ether, electricity, and light and power. So we'll leave you on that note, everyone. I hope that was profound as we were talking about it, as we were thinking it. And Campbell and I will do some awesome follow-ups, I guess, with this new working theory under our belts.
Yeah. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Of course, give us a like, share this around, hit the bell so you're notified for further uploads, whatever they say. And yeah, there's a lot going on in the background, guys. We will have an update on the Crystal City for you soon. We just want to make sure that, we sort of got something. We don't want to sort of be saying stuff, but we definitely haven't forgotten that. That is still going ahead, as well as lots of other things. So we'll definitely keep you updated on that. So thanks for joining us.
Yep.
And I guess we will be back next week or maybe before, who knows, with another Tartaria Australia for you.
Yep. You guys have the best fucking day ever, and go forward and increase that light quadrant, and let's counteract the dark. All right. We love you guys. We'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Awesome.